Hello, and welcome to the 2020 AIA Delaware Awards Program. We'll begin the program with a brief introduction to our jury, a discussion of their review process, and we'll move from there directly to a reveal and discussion of each of the award winners. Figure it all out. I think I was going to start just by introducing you. I appreciate you taking the time too, man. I know this has been probably more than you thought it would be when you agreed to do this. So
it's been great. It's been really enjoyable. Like I said, just to see how the sausage is made, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun to see other people's work and to get a jury together and hear other people's point of view as well, which is nice because that so many people bring up things that you don't think of, and especially with us not all working in the same location right now, getting together and talking about design is always a nice change of just the myopic nature of doing your own work day to day.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I think that's one of the big reasons why I think that the AIA award programs are so important, right? It's partly the getting everybody to talk about design. I think seeing what other people do elevates your own design, so you see, oh wow, like I hadn't really thought about doing some of those things that this award-winning project did. And we can, obviously stealing is the highest form of flattery, so we can take from those things.
Gives you plenty of new fodder.
Yeah, exactly. So well, yeah, man. So I'll just start, with me. If you don't know me, I'm Scott Edmonston. I'm the president of AIA Delaware. With me is Forrest Frazier. He was our 2020 AIA Delaware Awards Program jury chair. He and his firm have won a bunch of AIA Richmond awards, some AIA New York awards, some AIA Virginia awards. Most recently, I might have used awards plural where I should have used awards singular here or there, but don't worry about that. We're just upping how great you are. And then recently, your work was featured in Dwell. So anyway, Forrest agreed to be our jury chair this year, and I think you and your group did a fantastic job. So with that, I think, do you want to start with how you put your jury together? I think it might be like a cool, couple minute thing. I might be putting you on the spot here a little bit with some of these things.
I'm happy to get into it. It was a fun thing to meet some new people and reconnect with some old people. But my background is I've lived and worked in a bunch of different places. But then I went to grad school in California, and some of the jury members are from California. So one of my classmates, Dan Backman, is now a partner at TLCD in the Bay Area, and another one of my classmates, Yuki Bowman, is working in Seattle. And then I moved after that to Austin and worked there for 3 years, and met Tim Darrington, another one of the jury members who also has his own practice now, doing some really great work in Austin. And went to New York for a bit, then finally moved to Richmond, Virginia, but half my practice is still in New York and half of it's in Richmond. So we've been working some with Everald Glass as well. And he's another one of the jury members out of Florida. And then I also connected with Bert Pinnock, who runs one of the oldest firms here in Richmond. He runs the community design studio out of that, and has dedicated his entire career to service of the Richmond community at large, and is sort of the go-to in Richmond's design community. So it was a lot of different voices from different corners of the country, and I thought it was really interesting to get everyone together and discuss the projects that we did for AIA Delaware.
So how did you set up, how did you set out to, tackle this task, right? You've got 20 something submissions to go through. How do you and the panel start? How do you sort through it? What's the process?
Well, I started by calling Bert Pinnock because he's been on a number of these juries and asking him the best way of doing it. And especially being a year where we can't all be together, we went through the jury guidelines that were provided by AIA Delaware, and I gave those to every jury member, and and I gave all the submissions kind of a week in advance to all the members and had them look at it on their own time and kind of come up with the ones that they wanted to talk about. And then we didn't do anything else ahead of that. When we started a Zoom meeting, we just went over the jury criteria that was provided to us by the AIA Delaware, and we read through every single project, realized it was going to take a lot longer than we had planned, and set up a meeting for the next day. But we went through and gave every single project the attention, and then recorded all the Zoom meetings so I could go back and take notes and compile some jury comments about the winning submissions.
And I'm sure this is probably a question that people all want to know, but how long would you say it took you guys to actually go through and do this? Like similar to like putting books together, you're like, oh, this will take 10 minutes, but what do you think in total?
We scheduled 2 hours at the beginning, and then it took 4.
Yeah.
And, we tried to, it was important for me to be positive about every project, and they all have their own merits. And so we tried to not harp on, our more base architect selves and focus on negatives, but rather try to focus on the what each project brought to the table. And, some projects provoked a lot more discussion just because of their program. And that was kind of an interesting and kind of stimulating thing to be involved with. But it took a little while. The presentation is a project in and of itself, and it's time consuming. And then at the end of it, that's all we have to see. The jury, we don't have the luxury of visiting a building. I'm sure there would have been different results had we done that. So I think that just shows like the importance of putting together a cohesive, and like I would say at the end of it, a lot of the jury was saying that the edited submissions were probably the best, the ones where you really, if you have a doubt about the way that picture looks or what it's saying, then don't include it. What I was going to say. So it's some of the projects I think on a different year with a different jury could have easily had a different result too, because you get such a unique group of people together, and certain juror members can feed off of each other and go down this path and have very different ideas and backgrounds that can result in very different tastes and likes and dislikes.
That's why I think it's so cool this year that the jury that you put together is actually like from all over the country, and not just like, a couple years ago, we had a group out of AIA Wilmington, North Carolina, and all the jurors were local. It's easy to do in pre-COVID times, but they did a fantastic job too. It's just that it's just different perspectives, and I think that So, and to that end, I think some of the things that maybe you all didn't award this year are strong candidates to be awarded, in our 2022 program.
For sure. And like I said, again, everyone brings very kind of unique perspectives. And localities can have their own design culture as well, which I think it's great to get that intermixing as well. Some of the jurors, several of them had their own small practices. Before Bert became chairman of Baskerville, he had his own small firm here in Richmond for about 15 years. Tim has a small firm in Austin, which he's had now for close to 10 years. And Everald has a growing firm in Florida, which he started, I think, a couple of years before Andrew and I started ours. So we had that. And then we also had Dan's background doing institutional projects, Yuki's background working for a small firm for doing high-end residential, and now working for a more like design but larger institutional work firm in Seattle. But it was just interesting to see like the perspectives that two people like Yuki, who has like a background in Japanese woodworking, talking to Everald in Florida, catty corner in the country, who's a Haitian American. So it just very different perspectives, and it was fantastic to kind of get that mix and that dynamism.
That's cool. All right. Well, because I know AIA Delaware has already eaten up probably 2 full business days of your time. You want to jump right in and talk about projects? And the first project that we're going to bring up here is the, I'm going to say Deco, but it could be DECO, and it's by...
We called it Deco as well.
Deco, okay. And
we would be wrong. We would be wrong together. If that's
all right, good. So Deco, and it's by PIKL Studios, and it is a renovation of a restaurant in Wilmington. So
the jury really liked this project, and several of the jurors either had worked on food halls or wanted to work on food halls. So either way, really enjoyed the approach to this project, particularly I think its relationship with the community and the street. And a lot of these high-rise or historic buildings, it's sometimes difficult to get past the storefront into the space and really draw people in. And we thought that this project did an exceptional job with that. From the street, you have this really appealing and inviting view into this space right here, especially the bar is just really nicely done. Thought the way that the project addressed the community was fantastic. Several of the jurors said that they'd enjoy a drink there and sitting at that bar having a burger. I think it was a really nice project that is adding a lot to downtown Wilmington.
Yeah, and so you guys decided to give it a green citation, and I think maybe you hit on what it was about the green citation that you were going for, but is it the community engagement?
The integration, community engagement part of the project really won all of the jurors over. I mean, the doors to the left in that image that open up directly into the street, being able to sit and engage with passerbys. We really like that aspect of the project. Great.
All right. So, that's cool. So that's Deco or DECO. I'm sure we'll get letters. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a really beautiful project, and knowing Wilmington a little bit, it is cool to see stuff like that kind of revitalizing a place that lost a bunch of jobs to DuPont and things like that. So
for sure.
All right. So our next project is a merit award for the restoration of Howard High School of Technology for historic resources. This was by ABHA, and you can see.
And this was a project that had a lot of history and a really rich history and a beautiful old building. And the jury really appreciated the presentation of this project, and it's side by side showing what historic photograph of the building and the restoration efforts. So you can see right here just some of these original rooms being restored to their former glory. We understand, and I think one thing the jury talked and discussed a lot with this project was the need to upgrade systems in these older schools. So these older schools, and I went to high school at a similar high school to this in Virginia, and they didn't have very large windows and high ceilings because they didn't have AC, and there wasn't even a lot of artificial lighting in the original buildings. And of course, now you have to go back and add in mechanical systems and lights and data and power in new ways. We, I think, wished the project had spent a little more effort on some of the secondary spaces, like the classrooms, in doing more innovative things with, than just an ACT ceiling to conceal everything. But on all the primary spaces, like the auditorium, the entry, and the more historically significant ones, the detailing and execution of the restoration was fantastic. So we really commend this project for its attention to detail and the meticulous restoration.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's beautiful, and the presentation is also really well done. I think that's a really important part to mention. It's just it's good photos, it's a good consistent presentation. It's also happens to be a really good building at the same time. So
right, no, it's a very great work that a lot of the jurors felt really contributed to the community in a positive way.
All right, our next merit award winner is 38 Oak, which is residential. It is by C Studio.
This was a project that the jury really just fell in love with. The jury, I think, really applauded the renovation, and it's particularly that the way that the entry was dealt with. If you look at the previous home and the entry of the home, it's got a screen porch in the same way, but it kind of obscures the entry, and there's a white picket fence. It just doesn't seem inviting in any way or connected to the street in any way. And then if you look at what the architects did to integrate the landscape and amend the front porch, screen porch in the front a bit, it just has a much better dialogue with the street and what we imagine would be have a sidewalk and a nice kind of like walkable community. One of the jurors noted that, quote, "I appreciated how generous this renovation was in terms of totally transforming this house relationship with the street." The jury also applauded the commitment to passive house technology and the interior detailing as well, just adding warmth. We really love the outdoor shower, the open stair, and some of the exposed structure in the ceiling. Another juror quoted that this was quite the improvement from the original house. I think that was really the feeling, was the reason we thought this was an award-worthy project was because it was how a house renovation should be done. It's not completely transforming the house. It's not necessarily an awkward Frankenstein. It's just an improvement and really making a house better in the way it functions and just feels to live in.
Yeah, you and I had an interesting conversation offline, not about this project, but actually about one of your own projects, which was about, what the architect has agency over. And I think it's interesting that it's like, what you see a lot where this house is big houses that were torn, small houses that were torn down and replaced with big houses, because that's what the financial value of the lot sort of dictates. So, a lot of that stuff is driven by great clients. And I think that's probably like a common thread that runs through probably all of the award winners. If you go back like to the historic renovation of the high school, it's like, obviously that group was committed to saving that building, right? And like, that's where I think good stuff comes from sometimes.
Yeah, and there'll be several examples moving forward of that same idea in some other projects as well.
Our next project is a sustainable office, also by C Studio Architects. The jury gave this a merit award as well.
That's right. One of the jury quotes for this project that I wrote down that I thought kind of summed up a lot was, "This project is sharp." So I think just when I looked at this project, to me, I liked how the presentation did not stray from showing the values of this architectural practice. Like I just about the building sustainability, but more of lifestyle sustainability, which I think is important, not just to focus on the specific technical aspects of it. Like I personally really love the image right here where you're showing someone biking to work with a bike rack, because I did the same thing in my office. I bike to work. That's important to me. Everyone in the jury was intrigued with the cork exterior siding. We figured out pretty quickly this was an architect's office, and I think everyone commented that they would love to use something like that, but has never been able to get a client to do it. So it's fantastic that. Another quote was, sustainability was front and center in this project more than any other project that we saw, and it was approached holistically from the materials used to the daylighting and solar panels. Another one of the juror members commented on how the ADA ramp was beautifully integrated into the front facade. We all, when planning out an ADA ramp, know that they're not always the easiest thing to make look good. And I think, again, holistically committing yourself to sort of these ideas of making your office, accessible, and being able to pull off, just a really nice entry ramp that also happens to be your ADA ramp is a beautiful move. Another juror said, I would like to work there. So I think that's as high a mark as you're going to get from architects talking about an architecture office. Yeah. Also, one thing that we noted, another image that I can speak of with this project is the rear of the project, where you're showing the party in the back, call it the mullet image, but like just having that, like it or not, work too often permeates into our personal lives.
Party in the back mullet.
Yeah. But it's nice to see this, and it's nice to see the kids, and I'm sure there's some clients and there's some coworkers, and just the idea of building community into your practice and it being about the people, I think is, like I said, again, it's just every image depicted the values of the firm, and I think the jury really appreciated that.
Our next project, let me see if I can pull this up, is a merit award for Amos Hall renovation, non-residential. It's by Zimmerman Studio.
So this was probably one of the projects that got the most discussion from the jury, and in a positive way. A lot of the jurors, a considerable amount of time was spent discussing whether this should have been a submission in the historic renovation / adaptive reuse category. And we even teased the idea of reclassifying it. But one of the jurors said, it's a really good example of what you can do with an older building. And another juror said, I wish this had been submitted as a historic renovation project, because this is how historic renovation should be approached. And I think that really sums it up. In Richmond, we certainly have a lot of old buildings. In New York, it's almost everything that we do is, in an existing building. And not treating the actual building so preciously, giving it a new life and a new form by preserving some parts of it and then integrating a new aspect to it was really strong in this project. Another one of the jurors said, the diagram is pretty clear, where you have this decidedly industrial and unfussy interior build out, and that language pushes out into the shell, where it expresses itself with these weird metallic pop out moments and the really surgical curtain wall. So it was this kind of, and the same juror actually commented that she thought that entry right there, that metallic entry, if you scroll down a bit, was sort of a reinterpretation of what was the former Gothic arch in the area. And it just was an innovative approach. And it was also a less is more approach to the interior finishes, with that industrial language, exposing the historic structure, exposing ductwork, just if you scroll up and using color sparingly, but in an effective way, I think was really strong. The detailing was really great. I mean, the curtain wall system looked meticulously done, and the jury really commended just the thoughtfulness with which everything was put together. Here's the use of color. I think it was really nicely executed.
Yeah.
Jury members felt this was how historic renovation should be done, rather than, so I think that was the main point of the talk about the classification of the job.
Yeah. I think that's a high compliment, right? Just this is how and I think that's what the awards program is about, right? It's like you're awarding things that you think are setting precedent for, for future work, right? So.
Right.
We also have 2 honor award winners. So the first of which is House on Gordon's Pond, which is residential and by C Studio Architects.
I think this was a project that, as the jury dove into it, just became increasingly surprised at the nuance of the project and how that made just a really effective house. I think the jury, I'll just read some jury quotes. I really do think this house, with a humble exterior, really went for it in terms of the spatial experience. And that was all about this subtle plan shift, the angle that was where you take these kind of like 2 house forms, the gabled roof form, and then slightly shift one of those. I think the jury was really intrigued with the way that reduced the scale of the house from the street, and it had another environmental aspect to it, with the orientation of that to the sun. And then, while at the same time it expanded the back of the house. And I think that just, the more the jury looked at this, the more they realized that worked in plan, and just how interconnected the spaces felt and dynamic. The small plan shift created all of these like great view corridors and relationships between parts of the buildings. So to read another quote, when you really study how the plan shifts create these pockets of space, defining the more public and private programs of the house, it creates some really great spaces to live in. And then another quote was, the detailing of the wood on the interior really warms up the space. And I think that this was a great example. And that's, I think, why it got, one of the reasons it received an honor award. Too much we get stuck in this idea of modern, and we get stuck in this idea of traditional. And really the overlap is, especially these days, I think is increasingly diminishing. I mean, if you're trying to do traditional with just trim pieces and so forth, whereas if you're trying to, I think in modern homes, to be a quote unquote modern home, there's other, sort of a language that is often used that can be equally limiting. So we thought this was a great house, neither particularly modern nor traditional. We just thought it was a nice house.
Yeah.
One of the jurors did comment on how hard it was to take a form, a traditional form, and not make it too fetishized or important. And this house did that successfully.
All right. So our last winner is an honor award for Puglisi Hall Orchestra Space by MGA Partners.
I think the jury thought this was unanimously the strongest submission of the group. It's only a room, but it's an incredibly complicated room. Several of the jury members have experience working with acoustic spaces, and we understand how difficult it is. And we just thought the project did such a great job with color, material, light, all the while that those aspects were creating great acoustics while creating a great space. This project just made it look effortless. Some of the jury quotes were, "The project itself is beautiful. It's restrained. There's an apparent mastery of the materials themselves, even down to the color harmony." Another quote was, "There was real rigor from the poetics down to the technical aspects." And another juror commented on that it was a quote unquote phenomenal RCP. I think the diagrams are really nice. We did get into discussion about, technical diagrams versus didactic diagrams. And one of the jurors wanted to see this be a little bit more didactic and a little less technical, but that was, nitpicking at a great project. I think everyone really appreciated the level of detail, the materiality, and it's just a beautiful room.
Yeah, you can see it is really well done. I think, like you said, the submission. I mean, the submission is beautiful and consistent throughout. I mean, it's just like as you mentioned at the beginning of our talk, like it's two different things, right? It's not just the project you're submitting, but it's the submission that you're submitting, and I think when I look at it, I notice, just having spent a few minutes with the project, that it's on a university campus, so they couldn't have had an unlimited budget, right? And they still made a really beautiful room, and so I think that goes to the rigor that you're talking about also.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really nice project.
Yeah.
I've worked on some performing arts centers before, and they're tough to get some of these rooms where the acoustic requirements are so high to also be beautiful. And we felt this one was a great mix of not overdoing it and not underdoing it, not just doing a black box and concealing everything, but not making it feel busy. It still feels very restrained and warm, and we thought this was just a great project.
Yeah. That's fantastic. All right. So those are our award winners. I think you mentioned that you had a couple that you might want to touch on that were sort of.
Yeah. So since there weren't an option, or there wasn't an option, let's forget to give honorable mentions, but I think we can give honorable mentions now here. And one of the ones that we gave an honorable mention to is the open house. Jury really, I think, liked what this house was, its intentions and its diagram or partsy, I think, was attractive. Basically, it's a lot that's like many lots in a suburban area. It's pretty hemmed in. So turning inward and creating a courtyard, I think, was a really strong way of dealing with, a strong argument to make as an approach. And, I think of the jurors, I'm pretty sure 100% are pretty strong modernists, and they appreciated aspects of that. I think it came down to some of the detailing aspects, and even just the courtyard itself looked a little hemmed in. And again, I think a lot of it was presentation. Like the architects who put together this presented the courtyard as its own microclimate, and we started really looking at the plan, trying to think about that. And it has a northeast orientation, which we didn't know what kind of, how comfortable that microclimate would be during a nor'easter. So that being said, everyone in the jury really liked this project, and we debated this project for quite a bit of time, and it was just a few things that kept this from getting an award. But again, like I said, it's good to be able to give it an honorable mention.
Yeah, I mean,
in this presentation at least.
Yeah, right. So like, for me, the first time I saw this project was after the awards were announced, and it's like, yeah, it's a beautiful house. I'd be really proud to have designed this. Overall, for me, going through, and I think you mentioned this before, I think it's a really strong pool of projects, right? So like there were a lot of really good projects. So, I doubt very seriously that there were many that you guys were just like, I'm not even going to spend a minute on this thing. They were all, I think, worthy contenders.
They were. It was a really fun experience, and really great projects, and congratulations to all those who submitted and the winners as well.
Yeah. Well, Forrest, thank you very much for your time, man. I appreciate to you and to the jury for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure, Scott.
Yeah. And for taking the time to do this with me too. Yeah.
It was fun.